Everywhere you turn these days, it feels like Temu is right there staring back at you. Open Instagram, Temu ad. Scroll through Facebook, Temu ad. Watch the Super Bowl, there it is again, promising you can shop like a billionaire. Is Temu a shopping miracle, a privacy risk, or a growing monopoly? I've seen it all. For nearly 25 years, I worked at the DOJ, where I investigated some of the largest antitrust cases in the country. Now in retirement, I'm working for you. Welcome to the Antitrust Insider. If you've ever clicked on Temu even once, you know what happens next. Your feed gets bombarded with tons of bargains. Earbuds for a few dollars, clothing priced cheaper than a latte, and quirky gadgets that look more like impulse buys than serious products. It feels like a miracle marketplace tailored to bargain hunters across the world. But is it really just a fun new way to shop? Or is something more complicated and potentially dangerous hiding behind the curtain? Today we're digging into Temu's rise, the connection to its parent company PDD Holdings, the growing storm of privacy and security concerns, and finally, the looming question that regulators are starting to ask: is Temu really a miracle, or is it a monopoly in the making? Segment 1, Miracle Prices or Predatory Play. Temu may feel like it just suddenly came out of nowhere, but it was launched in September 2022 by a Chinese company called PDD Holdings, the same conglomerate behind Pinduoduo, a hugely successful e-commerce platform in China. What Temu represents is not just another online store, but a deliberate push to replicate that model overseas, especially in the United States and Europe. And the expansion has been lightning fast. In less than 3 years, Temu has expanded into over 90 different markets, riding on a wave of relentless advertising and the irresistible hook of rock-bottom pricing. Instead of working through layers of distributors, wholesalers, and traditional retailers, Temu essentially connects consumers directly with Chinese manufacturers. That means when you're buying that quirky lamp for $12 or that sweater for $5, you're often buying it almost straight from the factory floor. By cutting out the middlemen, Temu is able to offer goods at prices that feel impossible on Amazon or in brick-and-mortar stores. Combine that with the fact that manufacturing and labor costs in China remain lower than in many parts of the world, and you have a recipe for very cheap goods landing on your doorstep. But that's not the whole story. Temu hasn't just been competing on cost efficiency. It's been flooding the market with promotions that are designed to hook you and keep you. Flash sales, coupon codes, referral bonuses if you rope in your friends, and even games you can play within the app that reward you with discounts. On top of that, Temu has poured billions of dollars into global advertising, placing itself squarely in the cultural conversation and even paying for Super Bowl ads. The surprising part is that this business model is not profitable, at least not yet. Analysts estimate that in 2023, Temu lost about $7 per order on average. So basically, every time someone clicked buy, Temu was actually paying to make that transaction happen. That means its parent company, PDD Holdings, is deliberately burning cash in the short term, betting that by undercutting competitors and grabbing market share, it can win dominance later on. We've seen versions of this before. Amazon went years without turning a profit as it grew, but the difference here is that Temu's losses aren't minor, they're massive. PDD's revenue in the second quarter of 2025 was strong on paper, roughly $14.5 billion, but profits were slipping fast. Margins are being squeezed by the relentless costs of advertising, logistics, tariffs, and payment processing. The company is essentially wagering that the miracle of Temu can only last if it keeps scaling at warp speed or finds a way to reduce costs. So the question becomes, is Temu just engaging in growth tactics, or is this a form of predatory pricing where losses are willingly taken to drive competitors out of the market? If a platform is willing to lose $7 per order to condition consumers to expect near free prices, what happens once rivals are squeezed out and Temu was one of the last players standing. Do the bargains remain, or do prices rise once consumer choice is gone? That's the antitrust question hanging in the air, and it's one we'll get back to later. Segment 2. Data, privacy, and security risks. When you download the Temu app, you're greeted by a cheerful orange interface and a dizzying array of products. What's not as visible are the permissions and data collection practices happening in the background. Independent researchers and even some government agencies have started to sound the alarm. A report by Grizzly Research went as far as to call Temu the most dangerous app in wide circulation, alleging that its software was capable of extracting enormous amounts of user data that went far beyond what would be necessary for simple shopping. Critics argue that Temu's design allows it to gather biometric information, access contact lists, track precise device data, and potentially transmit all of that information overseas. By 2023 and 2024, class action complaints accuse the company of collecting and sharing sensitive information without proper consent, sometimes burying permissions in legalese that made it difficult for people to understand. The Arkansas Attorney General even went so far as to call the app malware-like in its ability to dig into user devices, while the Attorney General of Kentucky filed suit in 2025 alleging that Temu was deliberately using deceptive techniques to conceal its data collection practices. That lawsuit suggested that the app's very design was spyware in disguise. Nebraska, Illinois, and New York have also launched investigations. At the federal level, the House Intelligence Committee has demanded briefings from the FBI and the SEC, citing fears that Temu, like TikTok before it, could be compelled under Chinese law to share information with the government in Beijing. This concern isn't hypothetical. China has national intelligence laws that can require companies to provide data. That's why national security experts worry that Temu could be a digital Trojan horse. It looks like a shopping app, but it might be a massive data pipeline behind the curtain.
Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain!
Temu, of course, denies these allegations. It has tried to minimize the criticism by announcing partnerships to host American user data domestically, even through Oracle, the same company TikTok once turned to for a similar promise of data security. But skepticism remains high. State lawsuits continue to pile up, and the regulatory pressure isn't slowing down. For consumers, those $5 bargains may come at the hidden cost of your personal information, your privacy, and potentially even your security. Segment 3, the antitrust question. Temu's strategy is aggressive, loss-driven growth. By selling goods at below cost, Temu pressures competitors in ways they simply can't match. Amazon sellers, for example, are struggling to compete with Temu's flood of super cheap products, and many small retailers find themselves priced out altogether. This kind of market distortion creates a dangerous cycle. Consumers generally want the cheapest option. Competitors lose sales and scale back, and Temu grabs more market share. And all the while, the company is losing money on purpose. This pattern is exactly what the Antitrust Division pays close attention to. If a company uses short-term losses to drive out competition, it can emerge in a dominant position where prices eventually rise and choices diminish. Some analysts already warn that Temu's negative margin model may only be sustainable if the company achieves overwhelming dominance, and that's precisely what raises red flags. In May 2025, Temu took a major regulatory hit when the US government ended the de minimis tariff exemption. This exemption allowed millions of cheap imports to enter the US without duties. When the exemption ended, Temu's daily active users in the United States were cut in half almost overnight. That sharp drop proved just how vulnerable Temu is to regulatory shifts. Still, they adapted by tweaking their logistics and continuing to pour money into promotions. The fact that Temu survived a blow that severe shows both the resilience of its model and the scale of the resources behind it. But resilience doesn't mean immunity. PDD Holdings' most recent earnings showed slowing revenue growth and shrinking profits, suggesting that cracks are forming under the surface. Still, Temu continues to capture consumers who are willing to overlook the risks for less expensive products. So on the one hand, Temu feels like a miracle with access to global goods at low prices. But on the other hand, it resembles the early stages of monopoly formation, fueled by unsustainable losses and haunted by serious questions about its security. So is Temu a miracle or a monopoly in the making? The truth is, it's both. It's a miracle in the sense that it's reshaped how we think about shopping, price, and easy access to products. But behind the glossy surface, there are the hidden costs to privacy, the risks of foreign data collection, and the possibility that Temu is using its deep pockets not to compete fairly, but to smother the competition entirely. What are your thoughts on Temu? Comment below. If you found this video helpful and informative, please hit that subscribe button, like, and comment. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay honest, and come back for more Antitrust Insider.